of integrating Shipium with Manhattan Active WMM, and then finally the types of outcome the customers see when they go live. Now, my name's Bart Muynk, and I will be your host for today's webinar. I've spent over 30 years in supply chain, first as a practitioner on both the logistics provider and the shipper side. I also spent 8 years at the research firm Gartner, and I worked at several tech companies such as Lemmica and Project 44, and currently I'm an independent advisor and industry thought leader. If we go to the next slide, we'll see that shipping has become incredibly complex, and it's led to increased operational risk for supply chains. On the other side, costs are getting harder to manage with increasing rates, and shipping has a major impact on growth as well as brand loyalty, as the delivery experience has become synonymous with the customer experience. So with that intro, I'd like to introduce my special guests for today's thought-provoking webinar. We have Adam Kline from Manhattan Associates and Jason Murray from Shipium with us. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you, Bart.
Adam, can you please introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Adam Kline. I am a product manager at Manhattan Associates. I look after our warehouse management strategy. I've spent a lot of time over my career, not just with the warehouse management side, but very specifically within the shipping context of warehouse management prior to my role in product management. So I've been with the company for about 27 years at this point, and really kind of eat, sleep, and drink warehouse management. So happy to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
Well, thank you, Adam. Jason, can you please provide us with a quick background on yourself as well as introduce Shipium?
Yeah, absolutely. I think actually the two are great. It's a great way to describe what Shipium is, to talk a little bit about the journey that got me here. So my name is Jason Murray. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Shipium. I actually spent about almost 20 years at Amazon. And my career was largely based on kind of the merger of technology and operations. And a large chunk of that I spent building out this team called Supply Chain Optimization Tech, or SCOT. And what we were doing is acting as kind of this middle layer that sat between the WMS at Amazon, the OMS at Amazon, the website at Amazon, to basically provide coordination and optimization of that kind of transportation layer that powers e-commerce. And really, the origin story of Shipium is when I left Amazon in 2018, my observation was that the industry is largely missing this layer of software that acts as this coordination layer. And so, obviously, as we've gained momentum with Shipium, what we're looking to do is find great partnerships like Manhattan, where we can find the best and OMSs, WMSs, et cetera, around and kind of enhance them with our system. So Shipium is largely an e-commerce logistics optimization platform at its core, and I'm excited to talk to everyone today.
Well, thank you for that, Jason. I know I was pretty excited about it when we met for the first time about 2.5 years ago. Now, we've been hearing a lot lately about unified supply chain platforms, and those platforms really bring the different functional parts of supply chain together. And it's better integrated through new microservices architecture technology platforms that also provide a maximum fit and flexibility. And these platforms, like Manhattan Active Platform, they're also built to support an ecosystem of partners, such as the one here with Shipium. And these pre-integrated partnerships help to onboard companies a lot faster. And finally, with growing volumes and complexity in e-commerce, we need enterprise-grade performance, but we also need improved stability and reliability. So with that, Adam, can you talk us through the partnership between Manhattan and Shipium and how you achieve the integration between the two platforms, as well as what do you see as the biggest reasons that customers with Manhattan Active WM have seen success working with microservices-based partners like Shipium?
Yeah, thanks, Bart. It's a great topic. Something that's very, very close to to our hearts and minds in terms of microservices. Kind of driving kind of everything we do to some extent. So I love the fact that, number one, that you use the word unification, unified platforms. That is something that we have really strived to provide to the market because what we provide from a warehouse management perspective is that plus, right? So it's warehouse management, labor management, transportation management, all in this microservices based architecture as a single application that allows us to do some pretty cool things. What I'll say though, without getting too techie, is that microservices at their core are, let's call them isolated components that allow us to collaborate very effectively, not only within the Manhattan, kind of applications, but also externally with partners like Shipium. So, we have hundreds of thousands of APIs published and available to connect, which allows us to work with multiple different types of ecosystems. So Shipium, parcel carriers, automation, robotics, you name it, and we have the ability to connect in a very reliable and effective manner, to be pretty agnostic when it comes to things like robotics and so forth. But when we come across a company like Shipium that's also microservices based, it's really a great marriage, because we've got APIs, they've got APIs, we connect the APIs together, and we're off to the races. And I use that term very specifically, off to the races, because we want things to be fast, not only from an initial implementation perspective, which this new architecture that we both are running on allows us to go really fast from an initial integration perspective. Think about modern architectures like this, and when we talk about these APIs, like don't get scared when we say we've got 100,000 APIs, because we document very specifically the ones that matter for integrating with with a provider like Shipium. So we have a developer hub that has all this great information that we can share, and then Shipium can take those and look and see how their APIs connect, and it makes it very easy to onboard and start to work together. But then the speed piece, that's just part of it, right? That initial implementation, we really want to see speed in production when we're actually working together and sending shipping requests and getting rate shop requests out there. These are things that can really bog down a system if you're not careful. And we need it to be very, very fast and highly performant, as you mentioned. The only other thing I'll mention here, is that the other thing that is important, I think, to note is scalability. So the fact that many of our customers might run steady state at a certain level of shipping for maybe 10 months of the year, but you hit that peak season and all of a sudden you're shipping 5x, 10x, maybe even 20x volumes. So this microservices architecture allows us to scale when necessary. The way we like to say it is, we don't have to any longer build the church for Easter Sunday, right? So we can scale up and down as necessary, as volumes are moving up and down, and handle those surges very effectively and very immediately, which is helpful for cost effectiveness and things as well. So I think there's a lot of other factors that we could probably talk about, but I'll kind of pause there for a moment.
Yeah, those are all great insights, Adam, and especially when you mention the easy part, right? I spent 10 years at PepsiCo and definitely saw when we had all these different best of breed capabilities on the older on-premise platforms, it was sometimes incredibly complex to have these systems to integrate, let alone to collaborate between the different systems. Now, let's start to focus a little bit here, and let's talk about some of the key benefits and capabilities of this partnership. And we talked about the growing complexity in supply chain, which we know requires a lot more flexibility to manage really any business challenge. And we know there's a lot of challenges being thrown at us from socio-economic, geopolitical, weather-related, etc. And as supply chain risk increases, companies also need more and more real-time control over their operations. And then we also hear a lot about AI. But I think especially in logistics, we see very strong use cases of AI through better use of available shipping data. And one such example, which is already in production today, is transit time predictability. So, Jason, now that we understand the background of this partnership, can you talk about some of the key capabilities that this partnership provides for both existing Manhattan WM customers as well as new customers?
No, thank you. Yeah, so I think it's kind of important to talk a little bit about flexibility in general. I think the world, one of the observations from Amazon was just that what I saw was there was constantly things moving and changing around as business requirements change, the world around us changed, et cetera. And operators at the end of the day are kind of at the end of that, right? Like they have to just absorb those changes. You know, if there's a major shift in what or how people buy, operators are expected to effectively take that in and kind of deal with it. And so a big part of the Amazon approach was we're going to build that flexibility into the system. And I think kind of levering a little bit off of what Adam was saying, when you do build with these microservices and you do it in this more scalable way on cloud, right? You have the ability. The way the system is set up is that you don't need to go deploy a bunch of new servers if you're trying to add some new capability. And what we've really done is we've built all this as configuration or data modeling within the system. It's also important to kind of so if you do need to make a change like add a carrier or you're ramping up a new building, even that's going to be a very quick activity with Shipium, because we're kind of set up to make those changes quickly. I think the next thing to talk about a bit though is kind of the approach. The second thing to talk about is kind of how we built the system. And the way I think about it is we made this conscious decision very early on to put the modeling into the system as opposed to making the data that we need to make our decisions, you know, out somewhere else, right? And so what we've done is effectively, on one hand, when we integrate and build our stuff into it, when we integrate and bring in a new customer, we effectively bring their contracts into our system. So we have a very, very precise cost model of what it's actually going to cost to ship from any method or any carrier. The second thing we do is we use machine learning techniques, which obviously I was doing very early at Amazon, to try to predict what is going to be to effectively predict what's going to be the transit times for all these methods, right? And the reason we kind of do this is because the issue is that you can't possibly take a human cannot possibly expect it to take all the complexity of all the end-to-end locations that a carrier is going to serve and be able to provide a precise transit time. So you really need modeling to do this. And this is a perfect solution for, I'm going to take all of your data in, I'm going to use Shipium's other customers, and I'm going to effectively build a transit time model. So when you mix this all together, what you end up with is this very quick ability using both our cost model and our speed model to come up with what is the right carrier to use. And then secondly, the kind of second order effect of that is that if you need to use that data upstream, we have that in the system readily available. So this can quickly be available to kind of incorporate into a routing decision, to incorporate into what you're telling the customer about delivery, to incorporate into kind of even internal routing within the fulfillment center. So all this kind of rolls together as, you know, heavy use of data, flexible architecture and approach, and then on top of that, this kind of availability through all stages of the supply chain. And that decision to kind of build it that way is really what brings forward that flexibility and control for operators.
Yeah, those are all great comments, Jason. We definitely see companies using more carriers, more diverse services, and in transit times, right? They're not static. They change throughout the year, where it's peak season or off peak, or we're seeing maybe some of the carriers that maybe have difficulty handling all the volume or don't have enough labor in the warehouses, et cetera. So it's very important to be able to kind of very quickly react. And so with that, we read more innovation, right? Shipping has become a lot more complex, as we mentioned, but in many cases, companies still rely on what I would call old tools to support that shipping process. And so we need more innovative solutions that keep up with the ever-changing shipping requirements, because even what we do today will change. It'll change tomorrow, it'll change in a year from now. If you look at how e-commerce changed in the last 10 years, imagine how that's going to change in the next 5 to 10. And so what we see is that Manhattan Active WM and Shipium really guiding customers into the modern era of shipping operations, which is, I would say, from my opinion, long overdue. But even if you haven't made that switch yet to the Modern Active WM platform, which, I know it's a big undertaking. We had the same things going on with when I was at PepsiCo. These were multi-year often projects because we had so many different sites. But if you're not yet on that latest WM platform, Shipium also works seamlessly with prior platforms, including WMI, and WMOS. Now, the biggest reason customers use both platforms is when the impact on customer experience matters to the growth, the success, as well as the margin of the business. And we all know that NPS, or Net Promoter Scores, and CSAT, which is customer satisfaction scores, are really driving those metrics. And to improve those scores, we need to provide a better shipping experience. So, Adam, what scenarios or situations have you seen as the best fits to consider the Manhattan Active WM with a modern partner like Shipium?
Yeah, so I think it really comes down to, to complexity. If you're shipping a single carrier, low volumes, probably that can be handled, kind of a native way, and you may not see, quite as much benefit. But as you start to look at, the growth of e-commerce, the growth of not only shipping volumes for retailers, but also, customers that are doing drop ship programs, the aperture has really widened in terms of who even is shipping parcel, using parcel carriers. But then you start to add in the desire for competitive cost, across those carriers. You start to look at interjecting choice. You start to look at other things that drive complexity up, and that's where this intersection really helps, because look from a core native perspective, there's always going to be a limitation in terms of how many carriers you can connect to from a native WMS perspective. How do you onboard more over time? Not to say that it's impossible, but a platform like Shipium makes it so much easier. Plus, you get the benefit of the long-term compliance updates, and it's always a headache, right? And so they just kind of take care of that for our customers, and also as a product manager for me, it's really nice that I don't have to deal with those considerations all the time. This is coming from somebody who's worked with UPS and USPS and DHL and Purelator and some of the other guys out there for a long time. It makes a big difference. So as you start to look at, let's call it higher volumes, a desire for more choice of carriers, these are the things that ultimately make a solution like Shipium very attractive. And I'm not to say that they don't offer other capabilities that are attractive as well, but I'd say if I really boiled it down, those are two of the things that would at least get somebody starting to look and probably say, hey, there's probably some value here for you.
Yeah, thanks for sharing those insights, Adam. And I definitely agree with you, right? Technology also plays a big role with people, right? How people experience their jobs. If they're going to have a tool that helps them really to like their job a lot better, helps really with talent attraction and retention as well, which is definitely another benefit of using technology. So far we learned really about the shipping challenges that we see in the industry, how the partnership between Manhattan and Shipium works, some of the key benefits and capabilities that the partnership provides, as well as the innovative approach to your shipping process. But as we know, for most companies, the main driver behind implementing these technologies is really the business value it creates. And in that perspective, we've seen significant outcomes at existing customers that use Shipium. We've observed a 12% average parcel spend reduction across customers. So imagine if you're spending about $100 million in shipping, that's $12 million saved. We've also seen major improvement in Net Promoter Score and customer satisfaction scores that are fueled by 99.1% on-time delivery during the 2023 peak season. Pretty incredible if you ask me. And on average, it takes the Shipium customers about 2 to 3 months to do full integration with zero additional services costs. Jason, now that sounds pretty powerful to me. What would you share as a one takeaway for the viewers today?
Well, I think, if you start with kind of why did we spend so much time on this at Amazon, and then why am I spending so much time on this at Shipium? Why did we create Shipium? Parcel transportation cost in e-commerce is kind of the largest line item on the P&L, right, in terms of just pure cost. And there are some exceptions depending on what products we're selling, et cetera. But in general, transportation cost is going to dominate an e-commerce P&L. But then the second point, which is a little more subtle, is that shipping kind of speed and accuracy also tends to be the biggest converter for customers, right? And what we're effectively doing, to draw off of what I was talking about last time, is we're providing the tools to operators to let them help be part of that conversation of how much you should invest in shipping speed and accuracy, and kind of bring that into the revenue side of the business. And so obviously we have to, everyone's getting pushed down on cost. We have to be able to optimize things to the method and the carrier level to get as most efficient shipping costs as possible. But we also want to be able to bring forward where are there opportunities to potentially speed things up or show the customer, a faster promise and increase the revenue also. So I think it's a great story in terms of this is a major lever for e-commerce businesses, and we're kind of bringing forward both of those pieces as an outcome for you.
Yeah, and I think, Jason, that's very important, right? There was a study at the end of last year by McKinsey that said kind of the top priority or top focus area of logistics managers really cost management. We've seen costs go up quite a bit over the last few years, and we know with high fuel prices, as well as increasing driver pay, as well as other factors like increasing insurance costs, et cetera, in transportation, that these rates are not going to go down. They're only going to go up. And then there's specific areas in the world, like in Europe, like in Germany, where they're also putting on top of that to any transportation provider specific infrastructure costs, and in future even costs with regards to carbon emissions. Now, these have all been great insights from our panelists. If you want to learn more, you're going to also be able to find us next week at the Gartner Supply Chain Symposium Expo in Orlando. That's going to happen May 6 to 8. Both Manhattan Associates and Shipium are there sponsoring the event. And of course, all of us will also be attending the Manhattan Momentum event in San Antonio the following week, which is going to be May 14th to the 16th. And as you can tell from the screen here, we'll all be having speaking sessions at this event. I'm not going to go through them, but you can see them here. It's going to be really interesting, talking about some of the things that currently is happening, what we're doing with customers, but also a little bit about what's going to happen in the future and some of the innovations that Manhattan is bringing to the table. So please reach out to us or come see us at either of those two powerful supply chain gatherings over the next 2 weeks. And with that, we've really come to the end of today's webinar. I want to thank our very special guests, Adam Kline from Manhattan Associates and Jason Murray from Shipium. And I'd like to thank you, the audience, for attending. Now, if you do want to contact us directly, you see here online the emails for both Adam as well as for Jason. Those, don't be shy. Please contact us if you want more information. And I really, with that, hope you enjoyed today's webinar, and we hope to see you on the next one. And of course, hope to see you in person, either next week in Orlando or in 2 weeks in San Antonio, Texas. And for those of you who will be attending, safe travels, and we will see you soon.